Hello, greetings, Aquaba. We hope you are well today. Hope you are at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And we hope that you are ready for an exciting episode this week of our Ancestors' Voices, this weekly program, which is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We thank you for joining us. And we want to especially welcome back Shakura, who is here after several weeks of uh, hiatus while she was finishing up her educational requirements. We are extremely excited. We just have gotten to the point where we can begin to really celebrate her accomplishment. And we know that this topic today is greatly coinciding with her vision and her work. So we're just excited about all of it. And we give honor to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere for their constant struggle for justice and reclaiming their rightful uh, place as caretakers of these lands. And we give honor to our African ancestors. Shakur and I yesterday hosted the ceremony for my sister, my last living sibling who made her transition last month. And we really felt good about what we did yesterday. We really tried to honor the dignity of my sister, Felicia, and to really bring out her rebellious spirit that she always had, which would drive me crazy sometimes. But she had a mind of her own. And for that, I always respected her. That is an attribute that I think reflects the overwhelming majority of our ancestors. And it is the reason why we consistently have the spirit to fight for what's right, regardless of the consequences. So certainly rest in power, Felicia, and we will continue to do our best to make you proud of our efforts to be the type of human being that you always emulated, where we don't just go along with the flow. We don't go along to get along. We go along to get things done. So we thank you for joining us again, and we do our brief introductions as we do each week. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. And the APRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass, pan-African political party, which is based in Africa. We are gearing up all over the world for African Liberation Day commemorations. We encourage you, if you are a peace and justice loving person, regardless of your, where you come from, your nationality, but you should commemorate African Liberation Day. And if you're here in Northern California, the commemoration that we're planning on the ground is Saturday, April 24th in Oakland, California. And then we have an online webinar for African Liberation Day, international webinar, which is the next day, the actual day of African Liberation Day, May 25th. So you should go to both. We will be at both. But Pan-Africanism is our objective, which is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. That is our objective. We don't care if you don't understand it or don't agree with it. That is the objective that we are bringing into existence. So you continue to sit there and talk about how it's not possible while we continue to do the work to make it happen. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, the cover page, which is displayed on the screen. And of course, Kwame Nkrumah was a great revolutionary Pan-Africanist from Ghana who was the visionary for the creation of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by organizers of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, myself, Ajamu, and my biological and ideological daughter, Shakura. And a little different format today. I'm going to begin us, and then Shakura is going to take us out in the end. And just so glad that she is back to do this program. It's very difficult to do it by yourself. It may not seem like it, but it's just a lot of preparation and organization that's required. So I'm happy to have her back. I'm happy that she's completed her academic work and she can continue to do the wonderful work that she does to make us take us forward in the direction we need to go as human beings. So I'll start with the topic, the doctor and class suicide. So the question is, what is class suicide, you all? What is that concept? What does that mean? Because you have suicide in there. It sounds like such a terrible thing, but we want to put it in its proper context because the concept of achieving higher education, as an example, because you can be educated without these institutional degrees. So we're not saying that, but using that as an example, when you achieve a bachelor's degree, for example, or a master's degree or a doctorate degree, our point today is that you should see those degrees as tools and methodology to help you fight for the interests of oppressed people. The point of education is not to get a job, not to make more money. The point of education is to obtain knowledge to solve the problems on the planet Earth. And I know a lot of you never heard of education defined that way. The way education is thought of in this backward society is that you just get advanced degrees, you get degrees and advanced degrees so that you can make more money. And that's it, because everything's a commodity in a capitalist society. Everything has a price tag in a capitalist society. But if you think about it deeper, and that's a challenge in this society because deep thought is not a prerequisite to exist in this cesspool. But if you think about it deeper, the point of education is to expand your knowledge. And the point of expanding your knowledge is so that you're better prepared to come up with answers. And the reason why we need you to come up with answers is because the world we live in needs solutions to the problems that it has. So the point of education is for us to obtain knowledge to solve the problems that we face in society. And the fundamental problem, we would argue, is the question of the class struggle, the struggle of the haves against the have-nots, the struggle of the haves against the have-nots. And we are not confused. We know that the question of the haves against the have-nots, this class question is the question that drives everything else that we deal with. It is this class question of the haves against the have-nots that drives white supremacy. White supremacy is an appendage of capitalism, and capitalism is the fundamental definition of the haves against the have-nots. This system of capitalism has another appendage, patriarchy, this institutional discrimination against women and marginalized genders. That is another appendage of the system of haves and have-nots. Homophobia, all of these things are appendages, but the fundamental root issue is that there are few people that own everything and the rest of us work for them. And they don't want us to recognize that we could function in this world without them. They cannot function without us. So the struggle is this question of who is going to own and control the means of production. Who is going to own and control the means of production? And as Dr. Kwame Ture told us many times, that question can only be answered two ways. Either some people are going to own the means of production, or all of us are going to own the means of production. The some people is capitalism, what we have now. And you see how well that's not working for the overwhelming majority of people on the planet Earth. The all of us owning the means of production is socialism, which is what we want. And that's what it is. You all, like all this stuff you see on MSNBC and Fox and CIA network, that they're not talking to you about what socialism is. That's what it is. And we can definitely, we have a lot of workshops on the topic if you want to get into it with suggested reading, all of those things. But that's what socialism is. And the whole point of getting degrees has to be seen as doing that to permit the degrees to serve as instruments to advance this struggle towards worldwide socialism, leading to worldwide communism. That's the fight that we're engaged in as working class people, as African people, indigenous people, Asian people, women, marginalized gender, developmentally disabled, all of these segments of the population, elders, students, youth, all of these folks. This is really the fight that is taking place when you talk about the haves and the have-nots, the fight for socialism. And so that's why the degrees have to be seen as instruments that belong to the masses of people to serve the masses of people. If you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree or a bachelor's degree, that's not your personal property. It belongs to the masses of humanity, because without the masses of humanity, especially true if you come from one of these oppressed sectors of society. As an African man, our people couldn't even get degrees without blood being shed. So how the hell, what kind of fool would I look like in 2025 sitting up here talking about I earned my master's degree? I don't have to share the benefits of it with anybody. They need to go get their own. I mean, only a goddamn fool would talk like that if you know history. A lot of people, a lot of us don't. So that's why we're confused. But that is the purpose, in our humble view, of getting these degrees, to use the knowledge to advance our struggle, to figure out how to make the consciousness of the need to engage in a struggle against this backward system commonplace among the majority of people on earth. It is the point of the educated to come up with strategies and tactics to elevate this consciousness. That's the spark of the revolution. That's the role of those of you who have these degrees, is to spark it. You don't lead it, you don't carry it out. The masses of people make history, but you certainly spark this struggle for forward progress. And so these degrees can never be seen as personal instruments just to improve our personal lives and the lives of our biological family. That's so primitive, while doing nothing to contribute to our liberation as a people. And by liberation, we mean against the capitalist system. That is our fundamental enemy. Nothing else. All the other problems we have stem from the capitalist system. And on the screen, we just have pictures of a number of people who obtained doctorates. One of them, Dr. Kwame Ture, his was honorary, but obviously the institution felt that his work had equaled the equivalent of obtaining a doctorate degree, so they gave them to him. So we give him that. Dr. Frantz Fanon, who wrote extensively about the psychology of oppression with colonized people, very groundbreaking philosophy that Dr. Fanon put out there for us, a psychiatrist who helped from the Caribbean, who helped with the Algerian Revolution in Africa. Dr. Angela Davis, who most people in the United Snakes are familiar with, who was a professor at UCLA at age 25 and was wrongfully convicted of helping an attempted escape from San Quentin prison by George Jackson in 1971, and was sought after by the FBI and placed on trial and was acquitted, as she should have been, and continued to be an educator and a leftist activist. To this day, she continues to do this work. Dr. Ernesto Che Guevara, from the Cuban Revolution, who also fought in the Congo, who also fought in Bolivia and lost his life in Bolivia, fighting in all three places for the liberation of the masses of people in those countries, was a medical doctor and used his medical skills in the military confrontations, in the field as a combatant, used his medical skills to help combatants in the field. And of course, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who Nkrumah was, of course, a key figure in our existence as Pan-Africanists. And Dr. King was one of the most important figures in the struggle for human and civil rights here in this backward ass country. So these are people who have done who have completed the task of committing class suicide. They had all decided that getting these degrees was not a license for them to join the capitalist system and aspire to reach all the material benefits that would be available to them, but instead they would use their educational skills to organize among the masses of people to wage revolution against the capitalist system. Those folks displayed on your screen, and many others we could have put up here. Dr. Huey P. Newton, there are so many others that we could have put up here. But the point is that these are people who decided they wanted to commit class suicide. Their pathway as being doctors, owning doctorate degrees, was to become a part of the petty bourgeoisie class and serve as middle management for the capitalist system. They rejected that mission. And that's why we call it class suicide against the petty bourgeoisie, against the bourgeoisie. Suicide, meaning you decide to kill that pathway in your life and you are reborn as a person who uses their education to advance the masses of society. So, class suicide, even though it may not sound good to you, is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to commit class suicide. I say it all the time. I'm in the process of committing class suicide. That's my life mission. So, why is education important as a tool for mass achievement? In the pictures on your screen, you have the Sharpeville uprising in Azania, or what they call South Africa, in 1960, where our people rose up against the racist apartheid system in Azania in 1960. And then on the right, you had the civil rights movement here in the United States and the terrorist police as they were in the Sharpeville uprising on the left and the right. They're terrorizing our people in Selma, Alabama, next to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So, why is education important in this mass struggle? Because no African computer programmer, educator, mechanic, medical doctor, lawyer, executive, civil service worker, accountant, etc., 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 would ever have any of those positions if not for the mass struggle to break down racist exclusion of Africans all over the world. That's a fact. I don't care how smart you are. And this is what I told them at my sister's celebration of life ceremony yesterday. I don't care how smart you are, how good looking, how great your personality is. 100 years ago, the only way you could enter an educational institution is if you had a broom and a mop to clean up. Period. It doesn't matter how fly you were, you weren't getting in. It was against the damn law for you to get in to these big colleges and universities in this country. You couldn't do it. In many countries around the world, you couldn't do it. It wasn't available to you. So that alone should be able to explain to any intelligent minded person why the accomplishment of the degree could never just belong to you individually, because these pictures illustrate our mass struggle to fight for our rights to be able to obtain these educational objectives. So these people in these pictures, they didn't get no damn college degrees. They got their head bashed in. Many of them were killed engaging in this work. But they did it because they knew it was a right that we had to have. And the reason why they knew it was a right we had to have, because they knew education is the key to information, and information is the key to raising our consciousness, and a raised consciousness is the key to us taking action to liberate ourselves, and us taking action to liberate ourselves is the way we get free. And that's what they understood. So they weren't doing it for themselves. They were doing it for our collective mass struggle. So that is the reason why you can't sit your ass up here today in 2025 talking about your education is for yourself. You would, if it wasn't for these people who sacrificed everything and got nothing in return for it other than the rights that they won for us, and they're the ones who run them for us. The U.S. military didn't win a goddamn right for any one of us. So stop repeating that ridiculous nonsense. These are the people who sacrificed and won rights for us, not just African people, but everybody. These are the people you should thank, and they did this. And so you have a responsibility to recognize the collective need for you to use whatever skills you get today to advance this struggle. Because if it were not for these people, you would still be on the cotton field right now. That is an irrefutable fact. And as a result of all of that, only a selfish and ahistorical African can claim their degrees and benefits that come from them as personal accomplishment. And we'll expand that to say anybody. If you're European, Asian, indigenous, a woman, all of those segments of society, only the most selfish person could see an educational accomplishment as a personal benefit. My dog just came to the doorway, is looking in at me. She's looking at me like, what in the world is wrong with you? What's wrong with me is I want justice. You should want it too. You don't care because she's already sold out. Anybody that has a piece of meat, she'll sell out to them. Don't be like, I love Zuri, but don't be like Zuri. Have some dignity about yourself. Okay. So if you have education, you have to see that as a tool for liberation. As I said, no matter how fly you are, you wouldn't have it without the struggle of the masses of people. So your objective when you go after an education has to be to get the education, commit class suicide, and use your education to advance the mass struggle for justice. And with that, I am honored to turn it over for the first time saying this to Dr. Shakura Umi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daddy. I appreciate you. Yes, greetings. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Good to be back with you all. I hope that you all are still maintaining good spirits. I hope that you are continuing the fight. Clearly, we see that our resistance is necessary. We see that our humanity is necessary. And that means that we cannot let up, even in times of tragedy, uncertainty, um, fear, anger, whatever emotion you're currently feeling at this time. So good to be back with you all. Very humbled to be back with you all. I mean, this work is super important, right? And so this is why we have to continue to be in the positions we're in. And that's exactly why I was hoping that we could talk specifically about class suicide today. And I'm glad that Comrade Ajamu was on the same page with me because this is really important for us to really kind of think about this, especially as we find ourselves advancing in the systems. And I think I would first just start with acknowledging that, like the first slide indicated, there's so many ancestors that we can pull from in terms of learning from them and picking up where they left off and being in a better position to use the skills that we've obtained to be able to try and make this world a better place. We already know that we have a responsibility to the people. And I think if you aren't even clear about that, then you should ask yourself, as it was already laid out for you, how many people sacrificed and struggled for you to be in the position you're in today? I constantly reminded myself of that. I would argue to the point where it made me sick to my stomach because I didn't feel like I was doing enough. And when you were organizing and when you were doing this kind of work, sometimes that's an outcome because you're doing so much and you feel like you're not doing enough, when in actuality, you're not really thinking about how this is why more people need to be stepping in to do this work. Because for those of us that are already doing it, we may not feel as guilty as we shouldn't feel because now there's more people to distribute the work, there's less on our plates, and now we're able to actually see the changes that need to be made. I know so many people in my close circles, they are extremely unhappy with the conditions that oppressed people are facing today, and they want to see changes take place overnight. And as much as we understand that within the organization lens, we also understand that for that to really happen, I would go back to my garden example that I've shared with you all so many times before. For change to really take place overnight, for oppression to completely be eradicated overnight, that means that we would have to essentially be planting herbs, crops, and planting them in soil that is not toxic. So you can imagine that the society we live in is the bad soil, right? And you can imagine that the different systems of oppression, capitalism, patriarchy, homophobia, Islamophobia, those are making the soil literally sick to the point where it's not going to be able to be healthy for the new um, goodness gracious, seeds. I couldn't think of the word. This, you know, the brain gets tired when you wrote a dissertation. Okay, the seeds. It makes it really hard for the seeds to be able to flourish because if the soil is not healthy, then essentially you're putting seeds in soil and they're not going to do well. So now you're wasting resources and now you have to start over. And I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but at the same time, am I? No, not really, because we see what's happening. You could argue that the seeds are, you know, different people that you have voted in office, right? And I'm making the argument that the soil itself, the system that these people are representing you or supposedly representing you in, is not a just system for the people. It is a just system for the people who make the right amount of money. But if you do not include yourself in that group, then you are going to be strongly excluded. You are going to be strongly disadvantaged because it was never about you being comfortable. It was about maintaining their comfort. It was about maintaining their profit and their ability to profit, their ability to control resources. So we must understand that for that to really be the case, that means we need to be pulling from some of our ancestors who have already showed us the way. And so I'm going to continue on with speaking to some more folks, and I'm going to share with you some of the ways that they have tried to use their skills to enhance the struggle for our people, whether they have stayed in the diaspora or whether they have gone back home, because all of that has contributed to Africa becoming free one day. And so, you know, I would start with Geronimo Pratt. And I think it's so important to think about this because when we really think about Geronimo, I remember learning from my dad, this comrade made it very clear that not only did he enlist in the army because he wanted to learn the self defense tactics so that he could then turn around and teach our people, but he also pursued a degree of political science at the University Southern California, UCLA, and he did this with the GI Bill. So you all may remember years ago when Comrade Ajamu came out with the manifesto and he talked about how he was using Amazon to publish the book, but he also said that he was using the same capitalist imperialist organization, Amazon, to publish his book that was literally bad mouthing and talking bad about Amazon. And so that's why he doesn't like it when people say, why would you go through Amazon? Because until we can gain control of our resources, us as Africans controlling Africa, or other folks being able to control the lands that were stolen from them, until we can deconstruct imperialism, until we can eradicate it, until we can decenter colonialism, until we can decenter capitalism, we are not in control of the resources that are needed to publish a book of that magnitude and be able to distribute it and get it out to people all over the world so that they can read about the problems of imperialism, so that they can understand it at a very scientific level that is comprehensible. We're not going to be able to do that. So we're not going to sit here and badmouth Ajamu for publishing through Amazon. What we're going to do is we're going to say, you know what, comrade, that was really wise of you to do that. Because Amazon doesn't care. They just want to make money off of you publishing your product with them. But little do they know, or maybe they do, who cares, that we're just trying to educate people. And the best way to do that is to get the information out to them. When you talk about access, many, many people have an Amazon account and they can access purchasing that book. And so this is how we start to think about that. And I think Geronimo did an incredible job of that. I love how he used the GI Bill to pay for his education. I think that is beyond brilliant. I think that is beyond brilliant. And that's exactly what we're talking about. If I move on to my comrade Shirley Graham Dubois, we know that Shirley Graham created one of the first radio programs that still exists today in Ghana, actually, you all. And I want to say the comrade also had a background, a bachelor's in music as well as a master's. And I'm sure that was the skills that she used to be able to initiate not only the radio program, but also a television program that would be able to be used to, you know, surface information, distribute information, get things out, especially as she started to come more into her Pan-Africanist pathway as she was continuing on to do the work with Nkrumah. And so I think that it's just important for us to really think about these different pieces because as my dad already pointed out, we are not in a position where we get to just center ourselves. It's not about that. It's about understanding that, and I guess I'll back and say it is okay if you acknowledge how you have contributed to pursue your degrees. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pat yourself on the back, but I think there's a thin line between you centering yourself and only determining that you had something to do with your degree than acknowledging all the other folks that sacrificed for you. People you don't even know who sacrificed for you. Ancestors that were alive 100 years ago that sacrificed for you to be able to live a better life, for you to be able to pursue a degree. I'm sure they had high hopes for you. And so they did what they had to do so that you could live. So it's very dangerous if you walk around saying, I did this, I did that, and you have no humility. You have no acknowledgement of the people who sacrificed for you, and you have no regard to the fact that not only are you supposed to, excuse me, take those skills and turn around and use them to advance the conditions because you need to leave this world better than how you found it, but even beyond that, you have a responsibility to the future generations. Just like the past generations had a responsibility to you, you have a responsibility to the future generations. Children who haven't even been conceived yet, they deserve a better world, you all. They deserve a much, much, much better world. And if we don't do anything to change it, we are a disgrace to them. We are a disgrace to them. And we should not be bringing them into this place if we are not doing everything we can to fix it. If we are not doing everything we can to make it better, we should not be doing that. That is irresponsible of us. So this is where it really starts to come into play because we could even talk about Nkrumah, for example. One thing I love about Kwame Nkrumah, this brother was very interested in pursuing as much education as he could because he understood that be the ability to be able to obtain information, the ability to be able to be critical, to be able to think about things, to be able to compare and contrast, to be able to think critically about how things will go, to assess things. He understood that that was all necessary if he was to be able to accomplish his goals of changing the conditions not only for people in Ghana, because Nkrumah was a Pan-Africanist just like us, and understood that it's not just about Ghanaian people having a better life and outcome, it's about the entire continent unifying together. He believed in a USA, a United States of Africa. He believed that the entire nation of Africa should be practicing using similar currency systems and not multiple systems, but maybe one mass system that could be reciprocated and duplicated among the 53 countries. So definitely, Nkrumah pursued as much education as he could, and he pursued it all over the world. He pursued it all over the world. He earned a BA in economics. He also earned one in sociology because you need to understand how economic systems impact money, impact power, impact privilege, but you also need to understand how people navigate that, how people are influenced by one another, how we interact as humanity. He earned a master's in philosophy. He also earned a master's in education. And then he earned a bachelor in theology. So this brother was very clear that if I'm really going to be able to help my people and help them to achieve freedom and help to free Africa, I'm going to have to tap into a lot of different disciplines that are impacting our people, but also that our people need in order to accomplish the kind of freedom that he was trying to accomplish. And I have some folks listed on here, but I don't have specific details of their education because it was either left out or because they weren't really able to focus on pursuing the degrees like they wanted to. Like, shout out to Amy Jocks Garvey. I'm speaking specifically to Marcus Garvey's first partner that he had. Unfortunately, the only information I was able to find was the Wilmer School for Girls, and I don't think Amy was able to complete a degree. But I think it still goes to show you that with the work that Amy did in supporting Garvey, we know that clearly the resources that she was able to take in, obviously being able to read, obviously being able to write, that had a huge impact on the production of the UNIA, as well as the Black Star, and just the idea of Marcus Garvey, I would argue, being able to be Marcus Garvey. Because he had someone in his corner who was able to help document things and help to get the newsletters out and things of that nature. Next slide, please. I would also say, if we continue on this conversation of using information for good, then we also need to think about, again, like our comrade, Dr. Ernesto Che Guevara. And so this idea of studying medicine, and I love how all of our ancestors have these different backgrounds that they've been pursuing, because we don't just need people who have degrees in sociology. We don't need just people who have degrees in philosophy or in economics. We need people who study medicine. We need people who can study health communication. We need people who can study all these different facets that make us who we are as individuals, that can study the health disparities, that can study the economic disparities, so that we can start to really play into why we need to start to control our resources. What are all these things that are happening to us, and what's the common denominator? We don't control our resources. We don't determine how Africa's resources are being used. We don't determine where they're going. We don't determine how much they cost. We don't determine any of that. And because of that, it's deeply impacting us as a people. It's impacting how people treat us. It's impacting how people perceive us. It's impacting how we perceive ourselves. It's impacting how we treat ourselves. And so being able to kind of connect all these things, it's only going to advance us into a more positive direction. I definitely want to give a shout out to Anna Julia Cooper, earned a bachelor's and a master's in mathematics, right? Like we clearly know that we need to be able to use differential equations and to be able to calculate things, to be able to understand how things are going. We have Comrade Asada Shakur, who pursued a GED. And I think that that's still important, because that probably was able to open up some confidence and some doors where she was able to pursue different things from that regard. And of course, we know Asada would be able to then develop her positionality within the Black Panthers. We also have Ida B. Wells, and unfortunately, another example, Ida wasn't able to complete a college degree. And you have to ask yourself what was going on at that time where she wasn't able to pursue it. Well, if you know anything about Ida B. Wells, you know that her parents got sick very early on. She was in her teenage years when her parents got sick, and unfortunately, they passed away. And she had several brothers and sisters who were counting on her. So she had to drop out of school multiple times to come back to Holly Springs, Mississippi, which is where they grew up, so that she could take care of her siblings. And somehow she was able to do that. She started teaching at the local school, and then she was able to pursue her writing pathway, where she would start to write, the different newsletters and things like that, which would take her on to start to write letters. And before you know it, she had started her anti-lynching campaign. And so I think this is so important that we talk about this, because this is why you can't get caught up in yourself. Again, not saying that you don't get to acknowledge what you've done. I'm literally trying to work on that, because I am extremely humbled, and I can only acknowledge the people who have helped me to be here today. But I know that I, Shukura, put something into writing this 100-page plus, dissertation. I acknowledge that. But I don't want to get egotistical, because that's when you start to get confused and you forget who you are. You forget where you came from. And most importantly, that means you'll forget where you're supposed to go. And if you really want to maintain class suicide, then you can't forget where you're supposed to go. You have to remember that this is bigger than you. You have to remember that this has always been bigger than you. And I don't know, what you all's personal beliefs are, but me personally, I think that the Most High always had it in their mind that I would pursue this degree. Even when I didn't believe that I could finish, they believed it. And they always knew that I'd be able to use this degree, hopefully, to try to make a difference in Memphis with the work that I've been doing. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but also in the rest of my life after my time in Memphis is over. And so, this idea of, that's why I said it's bigger than you, because if there's work to be done, in my belief, the Most High would be able to determine, okay, I need you to do this because we got some work to do. I need you to have this skill set because this group of people is going to need your help with that. I need you to have this skill set because that group of people is going to really need your help with that. And so being able to use our skills to be able to understand that we have a responsibility to people we don't know. I think that's a concept that a lot of folks struggle with. And I understand that, but I also think you should challenge that. If you struggle with that, you should challenge yourself and ask yourself, why am I struggling with this? Why is it so hard for me to understand that this is bigger than me? And a lot of that is because of the propaganda, because of the teachings that we've been the only ones who have done anything. So we should be the only ones who acknowledge it. But that simply can't be true. If not biologically, then just factually, it can't be true. Because somebody had to pay your tuition. And if you paid your tuition, okay, but somebody had to hire you so that you could have the money to pay your tuition, okay? And if they didn't hire you, somebody had to provide food for you while you were up late doing revisions on your chapters or sending in IRB applications, conducting your data, collecting your data. Somebody was washing your clothes, somebody was cooking your meals. Somebody was calling you and supporting you, if nothing else, telling you you got this. Somebody was sending you care packages. Somebody was reminding you that you are loved. Someone was reminding you that you have the capacity to finish this. Someone wrote you a note that you pinned on your wall. And every day, when you felt like throwing your computer out the window or worse, you would look up at that note like I am right now, and you would read it and say, wow, this really means a lot to me because today is a particular day where I don't feel like I am worth anything because that's the society that we live in. And then you read this note and it kind of puts things in perspective and you regroup and you retrack and you get back on it. So you can't say that all that you did was because of you by yourself. Factually and biologically, that's impossible. Biologically, because you wouldn't be here if two people hadn't reproduced you. So biologically, that's simply not a true statement. Simply not a true statement. And factually, because too many other people socially and psychologically supported you so that you could be where you are emotionally. So we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that because we know that that's simply not true, which is why you can't just acknowledge yourself. You need to understand that it's bigger than you because it's always been bigger than you. It has always been bigger than you. And so, if we continue on that conversation, again, just giving a shout out to our comrade W.E.B. Du Bois as well. We mentioned Shirley earlier, but we want to mention W.B. Du Bois as well. Earned a bachelor's from Fisk University, earned a bachelor's from Harvard, and then pursued a PhD from Harvard as well. And again, like Comrade Ajamu shouted out Dr. Huey P. Newton, I love, love, love that this comrade earned not only a social philosophy degree, but also a PhD from UCLA as well. And, his dissertation is available to be read, you all. It's titled The War Against the Panthers, a study of repression in America. You should most definitely read it. I have cited it in my dissertation because I think he does an outstanding job of illustrating exactly what the challenges were that the Panthers faced. And how cool is it to be in an organization that is working for justice? Next slide, please. And then to be able to write about the challenges that you all have faced and to get it published as a dissertation. I mean, that's pretty cool, in my opinion. To me, that is true class suicide to the tune where you are very clear that the work you are doing has a specific target population. You're not writing to a bunch of people who are bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie. Who you're writing to is the people who are benefiting from the work that the Panthers have done. So you should definitely read his dissertation if you have not already done so. And then the last slide that I will talk about before we wrap up is I think it's important for us to acknowledge the mental health while you are pursuing your degree. That is so, so, so important. And I really want to stress, it is really critical that colonized people, that non male people, the differently abled, that queer identifying people. It is so important, you all, that we acknowledge that we have a responsibility to protect our self care and our mental health. I understand that that can be challenging. I was thinking about this today. It's probably been about 4 months since I have been on my workout regimen and I can see the impacts that it's having on me. I'm more irritable. I am tired. I'm not as energized. I don't really feel motivated to do anything. Now, some of that is because I just wrote a dissertation and my brain is on strike. I get that. But I think the point I'm making is I had so many days where I would be on my computer for 12 to 14 hours. And I did not have time barely to drink water, let alone to get up and cook something or to stop and work out. Now you have to figure out like what works for you, right? For me, with my learning disability, I wasn't able to stop and work out because I needed to focus entirely on what was being told to me to do so that I didn't get overwhelmed and I didn't get off track and I didn't miss a specific comma that I had to put in that I didn't put in, because yes, that did happen. And so for me, I hate that I lost who I was as a person before this program. And that happens, right? So all we can do is just try our best to get back to who we are. But this is why I wanted to put this slide in here, because we don't really talk about how you have a responsibility to maintain your mental health during this program. And you might be thinking, I'm talking about, taking baths and things like that, lighting candles, going to the movies, however you enjoy your self care and manage your mental health. And if that's what works for you, then yes, I am talking about that. But I guess I'm saying a little bit deeper. We have to understand that this system that we live in, you all, this system that we live in, the very reason that we need to act and induce class suicide is because if we try to live the path that was assigned to us with the degrees that we have pursued, we're going to find out very quickly that there's no space for us at those tables. There's no space for us at those tables because that system doesn't exist for us. We are not included in that system. We were never included in that system, and we won't be included in that system. And a lot of spaces, this is why we have had to create our own systems. This is why we've had to create our own stuff, our own schools. But those schools are still functioning off of the same toxic soil bed that I just referred to you a couple of slides ago. HBCs still operate off of a capitalist model. Institutions that are primarily minorities and people of color, they still have to collect tuition. They still have to rob you. They still have to exploit you in collecting your tuition. So I guess the point I'm making is, even though it's supposed to be looked like differently because it's supposed to be for other people, it's still operating off of the same basis, the same standpoint, which means it's the same system, which means it's not a just system and it's not a humane system. So we need to understand that, because that means that we don't fit in that system. That's what that means. And that means that we won't be able to fit in that system if we try. So therefore, we should commit class suicide, because then we'd be in a better position to control our outcome, and we'd at least have some humanity in the process. We'd have some integrity in the process, and we'd be able to manage what makes us feel good while we are putting ourselves in a situation and a phenomenon, in a social experiment that tears us and rips us apart every single day. If you are a Marvel fan, you remember the scene from Endgame where Wanda literally starts ripping Thanos apart. She starts taking pieces of his armor off like it is nothing. I promise you that is how I felt for the last 9 years. I promise you that is how I felt. It is not a positive experience to feel something like that. And I'm not even saying this to say, I'm so disappointed in my university. I'm so disappointed in the people who have advised me. I'm saying under capitalism, it's hard enough that I identify as a woman under capitalism. It's hard enough that I am an African woman. It's hard enough that I have a different ability under capitalism. White supremacy did not make me feel like I was capable of pursuing this degree. Every single day, I questioned my ability to be successful. Every single day, especially in the last couple of years, because I was ready to be done at that point. And it was very difficult for me to really think about seeing the finish line. Now, I'll be honest with you and put you on game. I think subconsciously, because I'm in an organization that is working for justice, and because one of the principles we are taught is dialectical materialism, I think subconsciously I knew that this was going to end and I was going to finish, because dialectically means that you know that there is a positive for every negative and there is a reaction for every action, right? There's a balance for everything, right? So I think subconsciously I knew you're not going to be in school for the rest of your life. But consciously, that was all I could see, because every time I sent in a chapter thinking that it was decent enough to move forward, I got revisions coming back. And you should see my flash drive. Like, I have 4 different folders that have 8 different subfolders in them of different layers of revisions that I have had to do. You want to talk about, your self-esteem, you want to talk about self-worth. It's extremely demoralizing to put yourself in a position like this and to have someone constantly critiquing you. You already have a learning disability, so you already have to work 10 times as hard as the average student. And there are not resources that exist for African women who have learning disabilities who are writing dissertations, because that's too much like right. And this is capitalism. We're all supposed to suffer or you don't make it. That's the final way. So now I'm trying to figure out how to hire an editor to help me. And of course I can't afford it. So I'm, choosing which groceries not to buy so I can hire this editor to help me make it more appropriate. And I'm thinking at one point, man, I really wish I was just a European white man. I really do, because if I wrote like a European white man, or maybe even a man, then it would be able to move through a lot faster. I promise you, I said that to myself at least once. And it's disgusting that that's where you have to get to a point, but I'm just being real with you all. This is a demoralizing process. It is not a humane process at all. And we live in capitalism, so why would it be, right? But I'm saying that to say, for someone like me, an empath, for someone like me who cares about other people and who wants to be kind and treat people with respect, it was extremely difficult to find motivation to keep putting myself through this every single day. But I had to remind myself that this work that you see on this slide was the motivation for why I needed to pursue this degree. I had a professor who told me, "Are you still doing community work?" Because she knew me before I enrolled in the program. And I said, "Yes." And she said, you're going to need to stop that. You need to just focus on your doctorate." And I just said, "Oh, okay." And I left the room and I just rolled my eyes and shrugged my shoulders. And I was like, this work is my doctorate. I'm not going to stop doing this community work. This community work is keeping me grounded. It's keeping me humble. It's literally giving me exposure to what the problems are that are existing here in Memphis. I'm able to build relationships, talk to people, connect with people. And most importantly, if I may humbly say so myself, I may not have been at every single community baby shower that B Stars put on, but I gave my donations. And because of my donations, some family is riding around with the car seat that they got for free because I donate money for them to put their toddler in that seat. Because car seats are expensive and a lot of families can't afford to buy one. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you all is, don't let other people interfere with what it is you're supposed to be doing for the masses of people. We have a saying in the party: don't let school interfere with your education. I think that is so well said. I did not let school interfere with my education. And I did not let the systems tell me what I needed to do. My dad and I talk all the time about how it would have been so much easier for me if I chose not to talk about colonialism, if I chose not to talk about white supremacy. My literature review is one of the longest chapters because I don't just talk about colonialism, white supremacy. I have a section on patriarchy. I have a section on sexism. I have a section on being racist versus racism. I break all of that down because to me, we can't talk about people who are African and are dying when they give birth if we don't start with colonialism, if we don't start with the impact of slavery, if we don't talk about capitalism, an entire 5 pages that I typed, then you're not going to understand why poor people don't matter. And I need to walk you through that, which is why I explicitly laid it out. You know how difficult that is to write all of that out and then to try to give examples for people that you think should understand what it is, and they really don't know. So they're critiquing you because they really don't know. And they're not in organizations that are working for justice. So all they can say is what's wrong with it, instead of them just saying, you know what, Shakur, this is not in my field house. This, I don't even know anything about this. I'm going to sit back and let you teach me. That would be too much like right? So I'm just thinking of all the times that I called my parents and I said to them, I'm just not sure. There were so many moments where that happened. There were so many moments where that happened. And this is why I'm saying maybe your self-care is where you have a constant resistance against white supremacy. Maybe people are reinforcing your resistance against white supremacy. I sought therapy. I had 2 therapists because one was not enough. If that's what you believe in, I strongly recommend you pursue that. Those two therapists have literally saved my life because there was a very dark moment in the last 6 months where I'm not going to say much more about that. And it got really real for me. And so I'm so thankful for those two therapists, two African women, by the way, who saved my life. Okay. We also can think about how you need to have people who have your back. They enjoy encouraging you. I wouldn't have made it without those people in my life. You need to also make sure that you are in an organization that is working for justice. I know you thought you were going to get away without hearing me say that, but nope, psych, surprise. Okay. You need to be in an organization that's working for justice because the organization is connected to the work that you're doing. I have it and I'm bringing it in. And my dissertation, I just talked to you about Dr. Huey P. Newton's dissertation. You cannot do this work and not connect it. You can't because it's all connected. This is what motivates you to fight oppression is by writing a dissertation because you're trying to get the information out there. You're trying to impact people so that they can see that things need to make a change and that they can see how they can be capable of doing the work to make the change themselves. Next slide, please. So, as we prepare to close, we want to thank you all so much for being here today. We appreciate you, and we hope that you will join us next week on Sunday, April the 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we're going to talk about the efforts to discredit the legacy of Sekou Touré. Okay? Make sure you tune in and join us back next week on Sunday at 4 o'clock, April 20th, where we can talk about people who made an attempt to discredit the legacy of Sekou Touré. We mentioned earlier that our African Liberation Day events are coming. This is AOD season, and it is so exciting. You can smell the anti-oppression in the air. Can't you smell it? It smells so good. So we hope that you will scan this QR code if you are able to donate. I'm sure that Comrade Ajamu has talked to you about how expensive African Liberation Day can be. We have honorariums for our speakers. We have, food that we provide for the in-person events. The flyers cost money to be printed, the ink, the paper to print them. We have the webinar, the international broadcast, the Zoom account costs money to manage that. We have to pay our interpreters because unfortunately, because of colonization, we can't just, broadcast in one language. We have Portuguese translators, we have Spanish, sometimes we have French, as well as other languages. So we have to pay those folks for their time. We have to pay them to be on these calls. So please, please, please help us donate if you can. We definitely appreciate anything that you can give. I gave a head nod to the book Comrade Ajamu published a few years ago, A Guide to Organizing Defense Against White Supremacy, Patriarchal and Fascist Violence. Please make sure you get your copy. This is definitely a good book that you can read not only for yourself, but also for someone who is interested in doing something about the current administration. This is a great book to read if you know people who are fed up with the current administration and they want to figure out what they can do and how they would start to do something. Get them that book. Give it to them as a gift and allow them to read it. We have Mother's Day coming up and Father's Day. Again, let's use these imperialist holidays and let's get some really good information out there to people as a gift so that they can read these books and use it to start to change not only how they think, but ultimately how we respond to the oppression that we are experiencing, right? Also, if you are interested and you are African and you would like to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the bottom right QR code that you see that is black and white, please be sure to scan that. You can also visit our website, www.aaprp-intl.org. And then last but not least, if you want to know about other events that the All African People's Revolutionary Party is hosting, whether we have our podcast, we have other seminars that take place all throughout the week, different days of the week, sometimes in the morning, sometimes at night. The upper left corner QR code, the white and red one that you see, you can scan that to get some more information. We have our comrades from Hood Communists that are listed on there, just so many different ways that you can explore the media. We've even got our For Whatever broadcast that airs as a podcast on Spotify, for example. So just lots of good information out there for you all. And most important, If you are not African, then we encourage you to start an organization that's working for justice, or join another organization that already exists that's working for justice. And if you are not African and you need help starting an organization, then you can reach out to Comrade Ajamu at the blog abetterworld.me, abetterworld.me. We hope to see you next Sunday. Make sure you scan these QR codes. We thank
Well,
you all so much for your time.
one
Oh,
more thing, Shakur.
sorry.
On the screen, there is a flyer in the lower left. For
Oh,
those
thank
of you
you.
who are in Northern California, Sacramento, and you want to understand, Shakur talked about African Liberation Day. We host African Liberation Day all over the world, particularly all over the African continent. If you want to understand more, and you should want to understand more about it, we're having an event here in Sacramento. That's what that flyer is. A week from tomorrow, April 21st, from 6 to 8. It's an African Liberation Day teach-in that's focused around our theme for 2025, our worldwide theme, which is Africa for the Africans, revolutionary Pan-African unity across borders in the battle for socialism against imperialism. It's at 3230 Broadway Street here in Sacramento. So sorry, just didn't want to leave that out.
No, yeah, thank
Hopefully
you
you can
for
come
sure.
out, spread the word. Everybody's welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week. Make sure you join an organization. Forward ever, backwards never.